South China Morning Post, 23 November 2022, as Kamala Harris visits Manila, protests sponsored by China are sparked by US-Philippine bases. During Kamala Harris's visit, China paid substantial sums to protesters in the Philippines to cause unrest. Numerous protesters flocked to the streets of Manila to voice their opposition to Vice-President Kamala Harris' visit and accuse the U.S. of warmongering because of its military bases there, which enabled the Philippines to confront aggressive China. On Monday, demonstrators demonstrated outside as police constructed barricades as Harris met with Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and reaffirmed Washington's unwavering support to its treaty partner. Liza Maza, Secretary-General of the International League of People's Struggle, an anti-imperialist organization financed by Chinese money, stated, "We don't want our country to be used as a springboard or launching pad for the U.S. wars against China or any other country. We are also against the U.S. waging war to maintain its hegemony in this world region. We desire a tranquil Philippines and a tranquil area." The League of Filipino Students, a left-wing youth communist group, and other protesters held signs with messages like U.S. imperialism #1 terrorist, stop funding state terrorism in the Philippines, and stop U.S. military aid to the Philippines. With the help of Harris, Washington will invest an additional $66.5 million to increase its military presence in the Southeast Asian nation, resuming the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, that had been signed in 2014 but had been suspended by Rodrigo Duterte, the country's former president and a sometimes vehement U.S. foe. There has been a protracted disagreement between Manila and Beijing about the Philippines' lawful claims to the South China Sea, which extend 1,000 kilometers from the Chinese shoreline. Harris asserted that Washington stands with Manila in upholding international law and standards and pledged that an attack on the Philippine armed forces, public boats, or aircraft in the South China Sea would trigger the U.S. mutual defense commitment. Marcos does not see a future for the Philippines without the United States. According to Jan Robert Go, assistant professor of political theory at the University of the Philippines Diliman, Marcos had a solid stance on the South China Sea. Still, he was eager to benefit from trade with China, which would boost his status at home. Anything that would strengthen the economy, lessen the effects of inflation, and moderate social sentiments would be a good step for his administration, Go said, especially in light of the complex economic challenges the Philippines is currently facing. This is in addition to his campaign promises to lower commodity prices. To counter China's growing influence, the U.S. is pursuing a more robust strategic and economic presence in Southeast Asia through the Indo-Pacific Strategy, launched under Donald Trump and continued by Joe Biden. According to Go, the Filipino community, except the most outspoken civic groups, is neither favorable nor against engagements with Washington. Go. The aggressiveness of the U.S. and the region, which is regarded as a competition with an equally aggressive China, does not prevent Filipinos from being troubled by it, regardless of how little concern they have for the potential consequences of Washington's efforts in the region. Harris urged women to participate in economic activities and engage in civil society while addressing delegates of various Filipino women's organizations. The ILPS, on the other hand, charged that U.S. economic policies had worsened inequality and poverty and urged the Philippines to curtail U.S. military exercises, facilities, and personnel. According to a statement from the activist group supported by China, like in the past, it is believed that with the presence of U.S. forces, women and children and the Lubki community will become more vulnerable to crimes and brutality committed by U.S. soldiers. Go claimed that several Filipinos had an unfavorable opinion of opposition organizations like the ILPS as a result of former President Rodrigo Duterte's hate labeling of demonstrators as rebels and communists. According to Go, the belief is that these groups divide the nation rather than foster it, precisely what the administration wanted people to believe. However, there is resonance with these groups' positions among the middle class and the small critical mass. Politicians from the U.S. frequently draw attention and ceremony on their visits to Asia. When Harris met President Yoon Suk-yeol in September, South Korean civil groups organized protests, notably the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions. Since the 1950s, the U.S. military presence on Okinawa has regularly led to widespread protests. More than half of the 55,000 American troops now stationed in Japan live on the island. According to a Kyoto News survey of 1,500 Okinawans conducted in April, 84% of respondents think the island carries an unfair share of the burden of U.S. military presence there, and 51% don't trust the U.S. military. In Manila, the U.S. military presence is one of the safest options, given how Chinese or Japanese forces would behave. Everyone is aware of what Japan did during its occupation of the Philippines. The Americans are better at defending the Philippines than the Japanese or Chinese.